The deaf son of a millionaire lives in silence, isolated by wealth and disability, until a determined teacher unveils an unexpected object that shatters his world and opens a new one. Thomas Bennett, the only son of tech mogul Richard Bennett, was born profoundly deaf. Now 12 years old, Thomas had grown up in a world of luxury in their sprawling San Francisco estate. But his disability created a barrier even his father's millions couldn't fully bridge. Richard, a 48-year-old CEO of a leading AI firm, had poured resources into specialist therapies and experimental treatments, desperate to give his son access to sound. Nothing worked. Thomas communicated through sign language, taught by private tutors. But he remained distant, retreating into books and his own thoughts. Richard's wealth ensured Thomas had every material comfort: private schools, custom technology, a dedicated staff, but couldn't erase the isolation. Thomas's mother had passed away when he was 3, leaving Richard to raise him alone. The billionaire's drive to succeed in business didn't translate to emotional connection with his son. He loved Thomas fiercely, but struggled to understand his world. Interpreters facilitated their conversations, but Richard often felt like he was failing his son, unable to give him the one thing he wanted most: the ability to hear. Enter Claire Evans, a 35-year-old speech therapist and educator specializing in deaf children. Claire had joined Thomas's team 6 months earlier, hired after a string of therapists had come and gone, unable to break through Thomas's guarded demeanor. Claire was different. She'd grown up with a deaf brother, learning sign language before she could speak fluently. Her approach was patient but firm, rooted in a belief that connection, not just communication, was key. She'd seen Thomas's intelligence in his quick wit and sharp observations, but she also saw his frustration, a boy who felt trapped in silence, even among those paid to care for him. Claire's first weeks with Thomas were challenging. He was polite but withdrawn, signing curt responses and avoiding eye contact. She noticed how the staff treated him with a mix of pity and deference, a combination that only deepened his isolation. Claire refused to coddle him. She challenged him with complex sign language conversations, asking about his interests: astronomy, classic novels, and chess. Slowly, Thomas began to engage, his hands moving faster, his eyes lighting up when she matched his pace. Richard, observing from a distance, was cautiously hopeful. He'd seen countless experts promise breakthroughs, only to disappoint. But Claire's persistence intrigued him. She didn't just work with Thomas. She connected with him, treating him as a person, not a project. Richard invited her to dinner one evening to discuss her methods. Over coffee, Claire was blunt. Thomas doesn't need more gadgets or pity. He needs to feel understood. His world is rich, even without sound. We need to meet him there first. Claire had an idea, one she hadn't shared with Richard yet. She'd been researching a new assistive device, not a cure, but a tool that could change how Thomas experienced the world. It was a haptic feedback system, a wearable device that translated sound into vibrations, allowing deaf individuals to feel auditory patterns. The technology was experimental, developed by a small startup in Boston, and Claire had been in touch with the lead engineer. She believed it could help Thomas connect with his environment in a new way, but she needed to gain his trust first. Over the next months, Claire worked tirelessly with Thomas. She taught him advanced sign language, introduced him to deaf culture through videos and books, and encouraged him to express his frustrations. Thomas began to open up, signing about his loneliness, his anger at being different, and his fear that his father saw him as broken. Claire listened, validating his feelings while pushing him to take ownership of his identity. She also began preparing him for the haptic device, explaining how it could translate sounds, like music or voices, into patterns he could feel on his skin. Richard, meanwhile, was skeptical. He'd spent millions on failed treatments and was wary of another disappointment. But Claire's confidence and Thomas's growing engagement convinced him to fund the device's trial. The startup sent a prototype, a sleek wristband with sensors that vibrated in response to sound frequencies. Claire spent weeks calibrating it, working with the engineers to ensure it was tailored to Thomas's needs. She didn't tell him about it immediately, wanting to be sure it would work. The day came for Claire to introduce the device. She met Thomas in his study, a quiet room filled with books and a telescope. She signed to him, explaining the wristband's purpose. "It won't make you hear," she said, her hand steady. But it can let you feel the world in a new way. Want to try? Thomas, curious but cautious, nodded. Claire fastened the wristband on his arm and activated it. Starting with a simple piano melody streamed through a speaker. The device vibrated in rhythmic patterns. Each note a distinct pulse against the skin. Thomas's eyes widened. He touched the wristband, his hands trembling as he signed. "What is that?" Claire smiled, signing back. "That's music. Each vibration is a note." She played different sounds. A bird chirping, a human voice, a drumbeat, each producing a unique pattern. Thomas sat still, processing the sensations. For the first time, he was experiencing a version of sound, not as a concept, but as a tangible connection to the world. His face broke into a rare smile, and Claire felt her throat tighten. Richard, watching from the doorway, was stunned. He'd expected another expensive failure. But seeing Thomas's reaction, his son, who'd lived in silence, now feeling the rhythm of song, brought tears to his eyes. He stepped forward, signing awkwardly. "Is it working?" Thomas nodded, his hands flying as he described the vibrations. "It's like, I can feel the world talking," he signed. Richard, overcome, pulled Thomas into a hug, something he hadn't done in years. Claire continued working with Thomas, refining the device's settings. She taught him to distinguish patterns, voices, instruments, even environmental sounds like rain. Thomas began using the wristband daily, wearing it to school, to chess club, to family dinners. It didn't erase his deafness, but it gave him a new way to engage, a bridge between his silent world and the one around him. He started asking questions about music, requesting specific songs to feel. Claire curated playlists, from classical to hip-hop, watching Thomas light up with each new discovery. Richard noticed a change in his son. Thomas was more confident, more expressive. He began signing with his father directly, without an interpreter, teaching Richard new signs. Their relationship, one strained by unspoken guilt and frustration, grew stronger. Richard credited Claire, not just the device, but for showing him how to connect with his son. He offered her a permanent role as Thomas's educator and a consultant for the company, helping integrate assistive technologies into their products. The haptic device's success drew attention. The startup, backed by Richard's investment, scaled production, making the technology available to other deaf individuals. Thomas became an informal ambassador, demonstrating the wristband at a tech conference where he signed a speech about his experience. The audience, including engineers and disability advocates, was moved to tears by his story. A boy who'd found a new way to connect, not through sound but through feeling. Claire, reflecting on her work, knew the device was only part of change. Thomas's real transformation came from being seen, not as a problem to fix, but as a person with a unique perspective. She continued working with him, helping him navigate his teenage years, while also training other educators on the device's potential. Richard, inspired by his son's journey, launched a foundation to fund assistive technologies, ensuring others could benefit from innovations like the wristband. Thomas, now 13, still wore the wristband every day. He'd grown to love jazz, feeling the complex rhythms through his skin. He and Claire had a ritual. Every Friday, they'd sit together, playing music and signing about the world. Thomas once signed to her, "I used to think I was missing something. Now I know I'm not. I just experience it differently." Claire, fighting back tears, signed back, "You've always been whole, Thomas." Now the world knows it too.